What happens when an undercover owner stays at his own ski resort, only to stop cold after hearing an employee quietly crying outside. This is a story about hidden truths, human kindness, and the power of understanding. A story that will remind you that sometimes the most important lessons come from the people we least expect. The snow-covered mountains stood tall and silent, their peaks glistening under the pale winter sun. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine trees and the distant sound of laughter from skiers enjoying the slopes. Nestled in the heart of this winter wonderland was the Alpine Peaks Ski Resort, a place known for its cozy cabins, warm hospitality, and breathtaking views. But today, something unexpected was about to unfold. The owner of Alpine Peaks, a man named Garrett Hollis, had decided to visit his resort undercover. Garrett was a successful businessman in his late 40s, with sharp blue eyes and a quiet demeanor. He had built Alpine Peaks from the ground up, turning it into one of the most popular ski destinations in the region. But lately, he had been feeling disconnected from the place he loved so much. The paperwork, the meetings, the endless decisions, it all kept him locked in his office, far away from the heart of his resort. He wanted to see Alpine Peaks through the eyes of his guests and employees, to understand what truly made it special. So, Garrett arrived at the resort disguised as an ordinary guest. He wore a simple black jacket, a beanie pulled low over his forehead, and carried a small suitcase. He checked in under the name Mr. Evans and was assigned a room in one of the smaller cabins. The staff greeted him warmly, unaware of his true identity. Garrett smiled to himself, feeling a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in years, he was just another face in the crowd. The first day passed uneventfully. Garrett explored the resort, skied on the slopes, and enjoyed a quiet dinner in the lodge. He observed the employees as they worked, noting their efficiency and friendliness. But something felt off. There was a tension in the air, a quiet unease that he couldn't quite place. He decided to keep his eyes and ears open, hoping to uncover the source of this hidden discomfort. That night, as Garrett sat by the fireplace in his cabin, he heard a faint sound outside. It was soft, almost like a whisper, but it caught his attention. He stood up, walked to the window, and peered outside. The snow was falling gently, covering the ground in a blanket of white. And there, sitting on a bench near the cabin, was a young woman. She was hunched over, her shoulders shaking as she cried quietly into her hands. Garrett's heart ached at the sight. He hesitated for a moment, then grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The cold air bit at his cheeks as he approached the bench. The woman didn't notice him at first, lost in her own world of pain. Garrett cleared his throat softly, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She was in her mid-20s, with dark brown hair tied back in a messy ponytail and a name tag pinned to her jacket that read Lena. She quickly wiped her tears and forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine," she said, her voice trembling. Just having a rough day." Garrett sat down on the bench beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked. "Sometimes it helps to share." Lena hesitated, then sighed. "It's nothing really. Just work stuff. Life stuff. You know how it is." Garrett nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story. "I'm staying here for a few days," he said. "If you need someone to listen, I'm here." Lena looked at him, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, it seemed like she might open up. But then she shook her head and stood up. "Thanks, but I should get back to work. Have a good night, Mr. Evans," Garrett said. "But you can call me Garrett." Lena nodded and walked away, her footsteps crunching in the snow. Garrett watched her go, his mind racing. He couldn't ignore the sadness in her eyes, the weight she seemed to carry on her shoulders. He decided to dig deeper, to find out what was really going on. Over the next few days, Garrett kept a close eye on Lena. He noticed how hard she worked, always with a smile on her face, even though her eyes told a different story. He saw how she interacted with the other employees, always kind and helpful, but never letting anyone get too close. And he heard snippets of conversations, whispers about long hours, low pay, and a manager who didn't seem to care. One evening, Garrett found Lena alone in the lodge, wiping down tables after closing time. He approached her cautiously, not wanting to intrude. "Long day?" he asked. Lena looked up, surprised to see him. "Yeah," she said with a tired smile. "But it's almost over." Garrett hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "Lena, I know we don't know each other well, but I can see that something's bothering you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Lena's smile faltered, and for a moment, it seemed like she might break down again. But then she took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay," she said softly, "but not here. Let's go outside." They walked out into the cold night air, the snow crunching under their feet. Lena led Garrett to a quiet spot near the edge of the resort, where the trees stood tall and silent. She sat down on a fallen log, and Garrett sat beside her. "I've been working here for 2 years, Lena began, her voice barely above a whisper. "At first, it was great. I loved the mountains, the people, the atmosphere. But lately things have changed. The manager, Mr. Darrow, he's not a good person. He's always yelling at us, making us work extra hours without pay. And if anyone complains, he threatens to fire them. I've seen so many good people leave because of him. And now I'm thinking about leaving too." Garrett listened in silence, his heart heavy with guilt. He had trusted Mr. Darrow to run the resort, but it seemed like that trust had been misplaced. "Why haven't you reported him?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "Who would I report him to? The owner never comes here. He doesn't care about us. All he cares about is the money." Garrett winced at her words, feeling a sharp pang of regret. He had been so focused on the business side of things that he had forgotten about the people who made it all possible. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "No one should have to go through that." Lena shrugged, her eyes filled with resignation. "It is what it is. I don't know what to do anymore." Garrett took a deep breath, knowing what he had to do. "Lena, I need to tell you something," he said. "I'm not just a guest here. I'm the owner of Alpine Peaks." Lena's eyes widened in shock. "What? But why are you here? Why are you telling me this?" "Because I wanted to see the resort through the eyes of the people who work here," Garrett explained. "And because I want to make things right. What you've told me, it's unacceptable. I promise you, I'll take care of it." Lena stared at him, her emotions swirling between disbelief and hope. "Do you mean that?" she asked. "I do," Garrett said firmly. "You and the other employees deserve better. And I'm going to make sure you get it." The next morning, Garrett called an emergency meeting with the resort's management team. He revealed his true identity and addressed the issues head-on. Mr. Darrow was fired on the spot, and Garrett personally apologized to the staff for the way they had been treated. He promised to implement new policies to ensure fair treatment, better pay, and a supportive work environment. As the days passed, the atmosphere at Alpine Peaks began to change. The employees smiled more, their laughter echoing through the halls. Lena, in particular, seemed like a different person. Her eyes sparkled with hope, and her smile was genuine. One evening, Garrett found her sitting on the same bench where he had first seen her crying. This time, she was smiling as she watched the snow fall. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Lena looked up and smiled. "Of course not." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the snowflakes dance in the air. Finally, Lena spoke. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Garrett shook his head. "No, thank you. You opened my eyes to what really matters. This resort isn't just about profits or numbers. It's about the people who make it special." Lena smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I'm glad you see that now." As the days turned into weeks, Garrett made it a point to stay connected with his employees. He listened to their concerns, celebrated their successes, and worked alongside them to make Alpine Peaks the best it could be. And through it all, he learned an important lesson: that true success isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the lives we touch and the kindness we show. The story of the undercover owner who stopped cold after hearing an employee quietly crying outside became a legend at Alpine Peaks. It was a reminder that no matter how high we climb, we should never forget the people who help us get there. And it was a testament to the power of empathy, understanding, and the courage to make a change. Moral of the story: true success lies in the connections we build and the kindness we show. Never let ambition blind you to the struggles of those around you, for it is in lifting others that we truly rise. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Stories like these remind us of the power of kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or inspired you in any way, let us know in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to share this story with others. Sometimes, a simple act of sharing can make a huge impact. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community. We've got more heartfelt stories coming your way. Until next time, remember, kindness changes lives. See you soon.